In this video, I'd like to go over sort of the logistics of shelf tools. So in this video, we'll be going over in a little bit more detail how shelf tools actually work, how shelves work in Houdini. So you already know that we can create a new shelf by clicking this little plus button and saying new shelf. So if we call this week 8, for example, and hit accept, we can create new shelf tools by right-clicking and saying new tool, but you'll notice that there's this shelf remove from shelf set option. So what's a shelf set? Well, essentially a shelf set is each of these sections up here is one whole set. So what we could do is we could create our own shelf set that says this is where all of my custom tools reside. So the way that we do that is we click this little arrow here and we say new shelf set. And notice that doesn't let us name it right away. It's just going to be called new shelf set, but it is a completely new section in the shelves up here. Alright, so to give it a name, we can click this little arrow and say edit shelf set. And then we can give it a name and a label. So let's say maybe custom. So if we hit accept now, let's see where we can access shelf sets. So if we click this arrow again, if we go to this little thing that says shelf sets here, you can see that our custom is added in there. And there's a bunch of other ones that SideFX provides by default with Houdini. Alright, so if we want to edit this shelf set, there are a couple of different ways that we can do it. The simplest way is just to click the arrow and say edit shelf set, and then go to tabs. And here's all the different tabs. Most of these come from Houdini. So I'll just pick the ones that are mine, so maybe these, get rid of this new shelf, maybe custom homework is also mine. Alright, so if we hit accept, it'll add all of those in. So this is a great way to organize your shelves. And the other thing that I'd like to point out about this is that even though we can do edit tab and say here's where this is saved, tools and shelves can reside in any shelf file on disk, not necessarily the shelf that they're contained on. So for example, if I create a new tool and I say call it blurg tool, and say I save it to some other shelf. So instead of default.shelf, I call it custom.shelf and hit accept. You'll notice that even though week 8 is still in default.shelf, blurg tool is in custom.shelf. So it's actually defined in custom.shelf, but week 8 shelf can still see it. So this can get a bit confusing. You really have to look at where individual tools are defined and where individual shelves are defined. This does, however, mean that when we go to edit a shelf, we can add tools from any other shelf. So if we go to tools, here's all the tools defined in all the shelf files that Houdini can see. So if I wanted to grab something from maybe one of the rigging shelves, I can do that and edit in, and it's just there. And the last thing I'd like to point out is that shelf tools are actually ASCII files on disk, and we'll be taking a look at them in a moment. But first I'd like to point out that it's probably a bad idea to try and create shelf tools from scratch yourself in a text editor, because Houdini's editor is actually pretty powerful for creating them, but sometimes you do need to edit them or just take a look at them to try and debug things. So if we go and find the shelves, I actually have it up here. It should be in your My Documents Houdini 12.1 toolbar folder. That's where your shelves are stored by default. In Linux, it'll just be your home directory, Houdini 12.1, and then toolbar. So if we take a look at the shelf file that we created in order to store this blurg tool, if we just double click on it, You can open it up in any text editor, it's just an XML file. And you can see that it just defines this shelf document, and then individual tools are created in this way. Now, the interesting thing to note here is that your script is actually saved into this file. So if we were to go to Blorg tool, edit tool, and just say print Blorg, print font, and hit accept, come back here to Notepad++, it's telling me that the shelf tool file has been changed by Houdini. So if we hit yes to reload, you can see here's my script right here. So if you wanted to, you could even just edit the shelf script right here, although that's probably harder than just doing it in Houdini. Alright, so if we close this down, and then we open up default.shelf, it'll be substantially more complicated. So you notice that it defines a shelf set here, and then it tells it which tool or which shelves are actually on that shelf set, which these are the ones that I have. Yours will probably be a little bit different. If we come down here a little bit, there are some tools defined in here. You can see the code created in the same way. If we come down a little bit, we should be able to find our custom shelf set. In fact, I'll just search for the keyword custom. There it is. So here's the shelf set that we created at the beginning of this video. And you can see here's where it adds all of the tool shelves to it. And you can see that my tool shelves are also, some of them are defined here as well as some other tools.